Hey guys, this is Chris, aka Ojoy, and in this video I'll be going through some really important concepts that are crucial to beating microstakes. We'll be looking at these concepts through a hand that I played a couple of days ago at NL10. The concepts that we'll be looking at are first related to hand reading, specifically absolute hand strength versus relative hand strength. Then we'll be accounting for spastic play, and we'll be addressing a couple of leaks that are common at the microstakes, specifically folding too much and spastic play that makes little sense and not understanding your own range. So without further ado, let's get to it. As you see right here, we have ace queen and we're in middle position. We open it 30 cents, standard 3x raise. We'll get called by Lunster, who is he's tight, he doesn't play a ton of hands, and he seems to fold a lot post-flop. We also get called by Vasya here, who's Russian or Lithuanian. I haven't seen him play a ton post-flop, but I have seen him limp a couple of times. And I would think that he's a stereotypical tag fish or kind of type passive player, maybe loose passive, not entirely sure. Then we have Bedero, who he just bought in. He bought in for 250 BBs, and he's unknown as far as we know. However, he is from Brazil, and he has a soccer player as an avatar. He bought in full, and he squeezes to 165. That information alone can tell us quite a bit about this guy. So what we see is a guy who buys in full, there are 3 callers, and he squeezes. A squeeze play is usually not something that a fish will do. So we have to think that there's some kind of competency here. Also, his bet sizing is pretty reasonable, 165, makes me think that he actually knows a little bit about what he's doing. So the avatar that I paint in my mind, just by watching this, is the football player or soccer player in Brazil. His screen name, Bedero, makes me think that he is probably in his 20s. He seems to be a regular because he did buy in full. Because he bought in full, I also think he likes big, interesting pots. He 3-bet, which means that he is probably aggressive. And because he bought in full, he probably views himself as a good player. And there is a pretty decent chance that he is on a poker forum. Notice I have not played a single hand against this guy, but I have a pretty good idea of who he is. I use a concept that I call avataring. So I basically create an avatar for this player, because there are stereotypical players that you will meet at UNL, and you can sort of pick up on who these guys are really quickly. So on to the action here. He 3-bets. My question is, what is this guy's range? Given the information that I have about him, let's go into a program called Poker Ranger and actually pick out what kind of hands he probably 3-bets here. Let's start out with the obvious ones, which are aces, kings, queens, and probably jacks. These ones are guarantees. And then ace king and ace queen, maybe not ace queen suited, but let's say ace king is definitely guaranteed. With the information we have about him, probably ace queen as well, and then maybe king queen off, and king jack off is probably a squeeze, queen jack off probably a squeeze too, ace jack off as well. Ace queen suited probably 50% of the time or so. Let's see, let's do this. No, let's do, let's do 50%. Let's say he 3-bets 50% with this, and then maybe he has, what else could he be 3-betting here? So this is a good chunk of his range right here. But given that it's early in his session, I also think he's 3-betting a lot more different hands than this. So we could actually do it, we could actually split it up a little bit more. So let's see, he 3-bets ace queen off this much, and then queen jack off and all this stuff. Like, let's say he does it 50% of the time. Now we need to look somewhere else to continue his range. I think he'll be 3-betting a lot wider than the 5.5% that are implied here. I actually probably think that ace queen off is 100% 3-bet and ace jack off is more like 75%, which we're up to 6% down here, as you can see. Let's just start marking up some more hands. Queen 9, he probably 3-bets if he has it. Queen 8, Queen 7, Queen 6 as well. King 8 probably, King 7 probably, King 6 probably, Jack 8 maybe, 10 8 maybe, 10 7. Let's do a little bit like this. Some players like to 3-bet these things. I don't know what kind of guy he is, but let's give him a couple of combos like this. Some people, some people do weird things. So now we're up to about 11%. That seems fair for a tight aggressive player. So this is an approximation of his range. This is not 100% accurate, obviously, but it gives us an idea of what to work with. So now the action's on me, and let's think about my response to the 3-bet. Also, before we go on with my action, a quick little pointer about Badero's range is that he might be more bluffy early in the session than he will be later. It's sort of the psychology of an excited kid. It's sort of this excited kid syndrome, which a lot of players have, where they get into the session and they go for the first 30 minutes, and then they get sort of tired and they settle down. You can actually see this in people's red lines in their graphs, which it's kind of funny, where you will see the red line sort of goes up towards the beginning of the session and then it slightly decreases towards the end because they are semi-tired at that point. Their mental capacity is sort of dropped and they've been super aggressive for so long, and then they just settle down. There's nothing wrong or right about it. It's just something that I've observed in myself and a couple of my friends. So he also might be looking to create an aggressive image for himself if he's planning on playing a longer session. So let's look at my response to this, and let's start with the fold option. Folding, not going to happen. Ace queen is too strong in this spot. Do we 4-bet? Maybe. The problem is that if we get 5-bet, which if he's looking to create an aggressive image, it's not impossible that he is capable of 5-betting a little bit lighter, and then I'm playing a guessing game with my ace queen. Because 5-betting is not as common as 3-betting is, obviously. You know this. So I'll be playing a guessing game here because I don't know exactly what his range would be in this spot, because I don't know if he does it or not. So I don't think 4-betting is that great. I mean, if he 5-bets, my hand value goes to shit, and I'm wasting a lot of equity against his range, against Lunster, and against Vasya. Although Lunster and Vasya will probably fold if I 4-bet. Badero, his range, the range that I play against, will tighten up a lot. If I had, if I had ace 10 offsuit, I would like a 4-bet a lot better. Simply because I'm not wasting the equity that I have. I'm not, the concept here is range construction. So I'm not constructing a fucked up range pre-flop so that if he 5-bets, all of a sudden I have to waste ace queen folding it, which is a huge leak in my range construction, because I can't respond well post flop in a 3-bet pot if I don't have ace queen in my range. If I 4-bet ace queen all the time, then I don't have that in my range when it comes to playing 3-bet pots. So there's a little bit of range construction here, which I wasn't supposed to address, but I guess I did. Anyways, also if I 4-bet, the pot will, if he does call, the pot is sort of too big for a mid-strength hand like ace-queen. And I don't really like to play 4-bet pots with ace-queen. Now, calling sort of not a cool option as well, because there are players behind me, you know? So it might go 4-way in a 3-bet pot, where if I do hit top pair, I'm not really that excited, you know? If it's 4 players to the pot and the flop comes like Queen, Jack, 8, then I'm not super excited about getting the money in against any of these players. So, you know, calling is not a great option either. However, if I do make top pair and it's like a pretty dry flop, I'll be very happy. And one of the key decisions or the key factors in me making a call here, because that is what I end up doing, is that playing post flop and being deep, I think I'm better than these people at doing that. So I think I can make better decisions than them post flop. Hence the call is made. So I call, Lunster folds, and Vasya calls. Now, if you remember what I said before any of the action happened, I said Vasya was a little bit fishy. So I expected Vasya to call here quite a bit. Did not think Lunster would call as much as Vasya, but I thought because he had a tight range, there's a pretty decent chance that he might call behind, which he didn't, so that's good for us. So we go 3-way to the flop here. King, Queen 3, second pair, not that bad. Not that great either. If Bedero bets, I'm definitely not too excited. However, Bedero decides to check. Now this gets really interesting in my opinion. This is really interesting. Because, first of all, what does Bedero check? Because we're 3-way, it's quite likely that he's checking and giving up. Which means that my hand is probably way ahead of every other player. The only problem is that Vasya might call something like King 10 Queen, King 10 or like King Jack pre-flop, and then I'm behind a king. But Vasya is probably something like a 30-10 or a 25-10 if I were to say PFR. So there, you know, he has a lot more non-king hands in his range than he has actual kings in his range. So I think ace-queen here is probably the best hand most of the time. Because Bedero, once he checks, let's look at his range. He definitely bets queens. He definitely bets kings. He definitely bets aces, ace-king, and king-queen. With those hands going out the window, let's cut down on king-jack offsuit because he probably bets that quite a bit as well. So we're going to add king-jack offsuit here. So we're down to 6 combos of this. And then king-10 offsuit, he probably does 3-bet that pre-flop as well, so let's add that in there. King-8, he might check king-8, king-7, and king-6. Because they're weak kings, so there are a lot of kings that beat him. He might not want to bloat the pot, and he might want to play for 2 bets instead of 3. You know, so if he checks, there's a higher chance that he might check through, and then he can bet turn and bet river, or something like that. He'll turn it into a bluff catcher instead. He will also probably check all his queens. However, I do think that he is more likely to bet his gut shots and flush draws here. So let's remove spades. So let's go to spades. Actually, let's go to 75% here and then do this. So we basically get an approximation of removed spades. And let's see, what else did I forget? Yeah, he probably bets gut shots here. So ace jack offsuit is probably a bet. And that's pretty much it. So this is probably something close to his checking range. Notice that we're ahead of every single hand here, except for the weak kings and the offsuit kings here. But we're ahead of a lot of hands right there. Now let's see, he probably also c-bets all the ace jacks here, so we can remove that as well. And he c-bets all his spades, probably. So with that said, I decide, shit, I'm ahead here most of the time. Probably far ahead. I can bet small here. Vasya will probably fold stuff that doesn't hit. And I don't risk bloating the pot in case he does actually respond to 3 bets by tightening up his range, which I wasn't entirely sure at the time whether he did or not. So I decided to bet pretty small here, and I bet 160. The reason I bet 160 is I think I think both players will call wider. If I bet bigger, they might fold a lot more. And also this looks kind of stabby and weak. Although I do realize in this spot, if Vasya folds, I am way ahead. And if Vasya calls, I am still probably ahead I still probably have around 60% equity against Vasya's entire calling range. Maybe even more, maybe 70. Either way, Vasya folds and Badero calls. Now what's his range? I don't know. I would assume it looks something like... I would assume that it looks something like queens and kings, assuming standard play. Maybe the jacks here as well. And then, now we come to the concept of accounting for spastic play, because there is a chance, because of my small bet sizing, that he thinks... This is great logic that has always been used in poker, which you probably should stay away from. It's called fuck this guy. He might think, fuck this guy, he bet so small, he's trying to take it down. I deserve to win this pot. I 3-bet pre-flop. I call. So I don't know how to narrow down this range right here. I'm not entirely sure how to do it combinatorically. Let's just cut it down to maybe like 50% of each. Maybe something like that. Maybe we do like 25%. If we're gonna think logically, it makes more sense for him to check call something with a heart, with hearts in it, because there's backdoor hearts draws. So we might go to hearts only and say like, okay, he check calls all these and they're all combinations of hearts. That makes, combinatorically, that makes sense. If he's a decent player and he actually chooses his cards right, then he's more likely to have hearts in his range than he is to have spades if he is doing something ridiculous like reverse float. 7 of hearts on the turn, pretty harmless card. Queen 7 and King 7 got better. I didn't beat King 7 to begin with. Now Queen 7 is ahead of me. He checks. Standard so far. I bet $3. The pot was, what was it? $8.62. So it's still an underbet yet again. I'm saying because I know Badero's range is really weak and I know it can't stand a lot of heat. So I'm not going to put a lot of pressure on him because then he will fold. And then I am simply, my bet sizing will drive him out of the pot with all the hands that I actually do beat. And I do beat most of his hands, so I do think there is a very good chance that he will call again if he has a weaker queen, especially given the amount of draws that are out on the board. You know, I can have Jack 9, Jack 10, Ace Jack, Ace 10. I can have like let's see, 8, 9 of spades. I can have Jack 9, 10, 9. I can have picked up hearts on the turn, just taking a stab on the flop. I turned hearts. There are a lot of hands that I can have here. Now, it gets interesting. Badero raises. He check raises the turn. The only hands that make sense at this point are King 7 and Queen 7. Everything else is a bunch of horse shit. Which means that Queen 9, Queen 8, Queen 6, Ace Queen, King Jack, Queen Jack, and Jacks go right out the window. He will check raise maybe if he turns hearts. But his only value hands are King 7 and Queen 7. There are only 2 combos of King 7 and only 2 combos of Queen 7. Actually, there's only 1 combo of Queen 7. Queen 7 2. Whoops. I was a bit retarded. Either way, there's only like 4 combos or whatever. There are very few combos of those two exact hands. It is highly unlikely that he decides to check the flop with kings to underrepresent his hand, especially on a board that is so dry. So it is almost guaranteed that King 7 and Queen 7 are the only 2 value hands. However, more likely is that he actually has a complete airball. It's more likely that he has a turned flush draw, or maybe he has a spastic gut shot that he decided to check call on the flop. Like if he has like Jack 9 offsuit, and then he was like, oh, fuck it, I'm not gonna win this. So he checks with the intention of giving up. My small bet induces him to call on the flop, hoping to spike a 10 to win a big pot. And then I bet small again, and he goes like, this guy doesn't have anything. So he decides to play aggressively. There is a chance that he might turn a Queen X into a bluff on the turn because he realizes that he's probably behind. But even then, my Ace Queen is ahead, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm ahead most of the time, and I call. My range here, what is my range? It looks like flush draws. It looks like maybe gut shots, a queen maybe, or a weak king, something like that. I obviously call because I'm ahead. My hand at this point on the turn, right here, my hand at this point is effectively aces. I beat just as many hands with aces as I beat with ace queen, given his range. Now these were all hearts that I'm assuming that if he check calls and check raises the turn with something, then it's probably going to be hearts or like a turned something. You know, flush draw is more likely. Or maybe he hit like a 7-6 if he decided to spaz out completely, and then he check raises third pair, hoping that he might make us fold. River, 6 of spades looks scary. Should be scary. I mean, I have a lot of flush draws here. However, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of flush draws in my range. I'm not too excited about this card because if he does shove, it is kind of weird. But then when you think about it, if I have that many flush draws in my range and I have king queen, maybe I have king queen. I probably shove king queen on the turn. You know, let's keep that between you and me. You know, this guy doesn't know that, but I probably shove king queen on the turn a fair bit of the time. But, you know, the 6 of spades is kind of scary, but it's not really that scary when you think about what kind of hands he can have, because he probably bets most spade draws on the flop. So I probably am pretty far ahead of his total range here. In other words, I don't think his range exactly improved with this card. The only hand that got better was that if he decided to like spaz call with like 7-6 of diamonds or like clubs or something, then he turned third pair and then check raised and then like hit a miracle 6 on the river. That's the only way that I really see him having a better hand. And with the amount of spades that I have in my hand, I don't think he's going to be shoving King 7 or Queen 7 here that often. It might be more likely for him to actually check him and go into bluff catching mode. So when he shoves here, I mean, as you can see down here, we're getting 4.19 to 1. So we need 19% equity to call. If we go into Poker Ranger here and we assign the ranges to him, so let's say that, let's see, yeah, they're hearts only. These are hearts only and King 7 and Queen 7. We have, what is it? Ace of clubs, Queen of spades. The flop is King of spades, 3 of spades, Queen of hearts. The turn was a 7 of hearts. And the river was a, what was it, 6 of spades. That's the river. Against this range, we have 60% equity. That's pretty damn good. You know, 60% equity, that's a lot more than we need to call the river. Exactly what would he need to be bluffing here for us to call? Let's see, if we make it like this, then we have 20%. So basically, he needs to be bluffing like 4 combos on the river. I think it's a lot more like, I think it's likely that he has a lot more than 4 combos that we don't beat on the river. No, wait, that we beat on the river. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty easy call on the river here. And I'm not going to show you the results because, oh, actually, I'm going to show you the results just because it's fun. He had 9-8 of hearts. And I won what is a pretty fucking big pot with what is a pretty mediocre hand in terms of absolute hand strength. However, in terms of relative hand strength, it is really, really good. So, as you can see by this hand, you know, he's more likely to have spastic, to be spastic and have random air balls than to actually have a hand that beats me. And keep in mind that his line does not make any sense for any value hand if given standard ABC play that you see in the micro stakes. So if this guy is who I think he was, in other words, he was that mid-20s guy who's on 2+2 and he's reading all the forums and stuff, then he probably understands that this is what it is. If he does have kings in this spot, he took a great line. He took the best line he could possibly take because he was up against a thinking player. So if he did have kings here and he stacked me, if he fired, I would probably call 2 streets here. And they'd be like, I'd call 2 streets with like half pot bets. So that would be, let's go back to the flop here. That would be about $2.50 to $3. I'd call $3 and that would make the pot like 11 something. And then I'd call $6. So he would get 3 and 6. So he'd get $9 value. If he took this line for value, if he had kings, he'd go bet, and then bet again. And then I fold on the river. He'd get like $9. But if he takes the line that he took with kings, then all of a sudden he stacks me because he's up against a thinking player. However, that line for value is extremely creative. It's extremely creative. And if he does take it, he outplayed the fuck out of me. But he didn't. Instead, he fell victim to one of the biggest microstakes leaks that you'll see, which is the random spastic play where you think you deserve to win the pot, but you don't really. And he lost basically 250 big blinds, 2.5 buy-ins, because he did not understand his own range and he did not understand how to play his own range. And then all I had to do was play based on that. And that's really the key to playing microstakes, is to understand your opponent's range and then play according to that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There will be more coming out for me. So, you know, keep your eyes out for these if you enjoyed this one. If you didn't, you know, fine. Fuck you. I'm kidding. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed it. Peace out.